Hey guys, welcome to part three of my birth. Supposed to be a one-parter, but it's just one of those days. Honestly, I've been trying to make this video for what feels like weeks now, and it just every time I try to start it, something just is like, no. So hopefully this time I'm gonna finish it. I had the urge to push. If you were watching the second one, I'm gonna pick up from there. So yeah, I just like the urge was like it was too much not to. So eventually, after pooping my no pants off, um, they basically were like, "Hey, listen, like we're gonna check you again," and we're just mostly like they were mostly concerned that my water hadn't broken yet, which honestly like is totally fine. But I think just they were just worried about it. So I just kept doing what I was doing, just relaxing. Finally, I stopped pooping, and I went on to the bed after they like sent me back to my room. And honestly, with like one contraction, my water just like it just blew the place down. So then they were like, okay, cool, now you should start pushing. Which again, I wasn't actually like pushing. I was just trying to relax and letting my body do the pushing. I was just like, Jesus, take the wheel, even though, I'm not a Christian like that. But I was just like, go for it. Go for it, body. You do it. So then they were like, okay, cool. Maybe you should come back to the delivery room and let's see how it goes. So I go in, and this is the part I mentioned earlier in part two where I was like kind of in my head a bit because I was like, oh, like this urge that I'm having is like what they described would be like when you're almost fully dilated and about to go into like the ring of fire, if you will. Um, which is the thing I'm talking about is when you have this urge to go on your tiptoes. And I just like noticed that I just like couldn't get off my tiptoes. I was just up there. And at this point, the midwife kept saying in Khmer, she was like, okay, when's she gonna like get up on her back and so we can deliver this baby? And my doula was like, she's not getting on her back. And the midwife was like, what? Because the person that I spoke to, the owner of the clinic, was not who was delivering my baby, so they didn't have any idea about my birth plan at all. So they were just really shocked that I would just refuse to get on my back, and they were like, "Okay, go on your back," and I'd be like, "No, no." And I think maybe they were just really surprised, to be honest with you. Um, I was standing like with my hands on the delivery bed or whatever. And they were like, you can't give birth like that. Like you have to get up on this bed somehow. So my doula and my partner like lifted me onto the bed, and I was kind of like on my hands and knees and just like, in it. Um, and they were like, oh my goodness, like we can see the head. And I was like, oh, this is crazy, like, because like I mentioned earlier, it's kind of like you're on like this weird like drug trip, but you're like completely sober. At least I was, anyways. I had a totally natural birth, no medication, no any of that. So, anyways, um, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And then I noticed like the midwives were like getting dressed, but they were like putting on like a what I would describe as like a butcher's apron, like a really big, like plasticky apron and like big rubber rain boots. And I was like, what is this? Really strange. But then they realized, like, okay, like baby's still not like fully ready to come. So they just kind of like sunk back in their chairs. They kind of pulled up some plastic chairs and we're just kind of like chilling and just chit chatting, like probably about the weather or something. So I found out later that they were like, oh, in Kamai, my doula told me this later, there's no way that she's going to be able to push this baby out in this position. Like, she needs to just pop on her back because, like, this isn't going to work. This baby's not coming. I don't know what she's doing. And this is one of the reasons why I was really grateful that I don't speak the local language, because this would have probably really pissed me off at this point. Um, but it didn't, because I was just totally oblivious to what they were saying. Um, I just remembered one part I forgot. Maybe I shouldn't share. Um, so, yeah, basically, like with one big old push, like, boom, baby came. They had to like jump to catch my baby, but they did, thank God. And yeah, she was out. So I actually requested delayed cord clamping. I initially actually wanted a lotus birth, which means you keep the cord intact, and basically preserve the placenta with herbs and all these other things, but that's not a thing here, and I recognize that, as along with the home birth not being a thing, so I just kind of went with it. But I did not receive delayed cord clamping, which actually, like, still I'm a little upset about it, to be honest, because 1/3 of my baby's blood was still in that placenta, and they just like were like, nope, you don't get that. That's not for you, even though it's definitely her blood. Um, so that made me a little sad. But anyways, they brought her up, and I just put her right on my chest. She immediately just latched right on and just was like going to town. And I was just like, oh my God, my baby, like just in this like euphoric high. And it was so amazing to be able to like have my wits about me and be able to move and just like have this baby. And it was so amazing. I was like, yeah, yeah, this is the best. But then the afterbirth care started, and I was like, oh, what's this? I don't know. Like I said, I'm studying to be a childbirth educator, so I should be aware of these things, and I was not. So for those of you that are not studying to be a childbirth educator, here's some information for you. The afterbirth care is, for at least for me, was the worst part of my birth, because I tore. Um, Probably because I was like, oh God, they told me not to push, and my body was like, you're pushing. Plus, I was like pooping all over the place, so I was like, oh, I can't stop pooping. I'm so embarrassed, and that was the whole thing. So yeah, I tore. To be honest, I don't know what degree. Probably pretty severely though. So they had to like stitch me up and do all these things. No bedside manner, and also I had no idea what they were doing, other than like I figured out I tore, but otherwise, like, I had no clue what they were doing, and I was just like, what are you doing, stop, like I was yelling and like, what the fuck, like, because it was painful, and I felt like violated a little bit. And I know that they had my best intentions at heart. They were just trying to like clean me up and make sure, I wasn't going to get infection, all these things. But it really, really, really disturbed me. And honestly, like, now, just looking back, it's like I feel like the energy like really shifted from like this beautiful birth, energy, to all of a sudden this like fear and terror and like pain and all of these things. Because I practiced hypnobirthing meditations, I had trained my mind to see contractions or surges or whatever you want to call them as not being painful. And honestly, I can say, like, yeah, of course it was uncomfortable, but I wouldn't call it pain at all. And people are going to say, what are you talking about? Birth is painful. Honestly, like, you can train your brain to do or think anything. So guess what, guys? I didn't see it as painful. It wasn't painful for me. It was just this opening feeling, this like, this is the feeling. I don't know how to describe it. Literally, my body was like opening for my baby. So, but guess what? I didn't train my brain to prepare for the afterbirth. So I was like, oh, snap, this is really painful. They had to like stitch me up and do all these other things. So that wasn't so fun. And like I said, the energy of the room just kind of changed from like, oh, beautiful, at least for me anyways, it changed from like beautiful energy to like really like, oh, I really hate this and I want them to stop. And I even yelled at them like, stop. Oh, because another thing that they were doing is they were pulling on the cord like to try and get the placenta out, and they were very concerned that I was going to like hemorrhage all over the place, which honestly that's not the case. Like people should be given at least half an hour, in some cases an hour, to let the placenta come out naturally. They were like, nope, nope, nope. Basically, as soon as that cord was clamped and cut, they just started pulling, pulling on it. And they were like pushing on my stomach, pulling at the same time. And that's when I was like, stop. Like, I even yelled, stop. I had to ask my doula to tell them to literally stop because it was so painful. And they, they really wanted me to take an oxytocin shot to push the placenta out quicker. And I, for anyone that knows me, I'm like, no medication. I don't need that. I trust my body. I know how to do this. Like, leave my body alone. And honestly, like, they were so pushy with it and doing this pushing, pulling thing that I eventually gave in. I was like, I cannot stand this feeling. Like, it was so painful. And also, I was feeling coerced because they were like, you need it, you need it, you need it, as they're like pulling. So it was like painful, as in like, it was almost like they were like threatening me, like, if you don't do this, we're just going to keep like hurting you. So I eventually just gave in. And honestly, like, to any mom or pregnant or birthing person out there who felt coerced during or after their birth, I'm so sorry that that happened to you, because that's not how it's supposed to be. In the world today, this is a common thing, but it just because it's common doesn't mean it's right or it's normal. So, I'm sorry that that happened to you. You deserve better than that, and I deserve better than that. We all do. So after that, I had my baby, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. They like threw me in a little wheelchair, wheeled me back to our room, and I just kind of sat there and nursed her because she just like was like attached nonstop. Um, and yeah, basically like we stayed up most of the night where she just wanted to nurse and be close to me, and we did. And she took a little snooze, but it was mostly just staying on me. And the first available hour that we were able to leave, like basically like 6 a.m., I was like, let's get out of here. This room, like the room that we were in, was like really stuffy and just like not that comfortable. And I knew that our house was just like a couple blocks away. I was like, you know what, let's just skedaddle, let's get out of here. So we had to sit and decide her name because we still didn't have her name decided, so that we could leave. So we picked her name and got the birth certificate filled out real quick so we could get out of there. We actually took a remork, or like a scooter wagon, back to our place so that we could take the birth ball, which, I mean, in Western countries, if you're watching this, you're probably like, what? You took a wagon home? Yes, we took a wagon home. We didn't have a car seat or anything because, there's no attachments for car seats in these wagons. I just held her in my arms and we went back. And yeah, I spent basically going into postpartum a little bit. I spent 6 weeks. I didn't leave the house. Stayed with my baby. I'm so grateful that a couple of people were really kind to make, or a few people actually, made me some food. And I'm just honestly like, postpartum is the time to be cared for and to accept help. So if you're pregnant and you're like, what am I going to do in postpartum? Get help. Get help. And not just from your partner, like not just from your family. If you can afford a postpartum doula, highly recommend it. If you can't afford a postpartum doula, contact your friends and just say, guys, like, this is what I need from you. These are the recipes that I need you to make. XYZ. While you're pregnant and you're in your nesting phase, make yourself some nipple butter, because if you're planning to breastfeed, your nipples are gonna hurt. It's normal at first that breastfeeding isn't just magic latch and that's it. Like, for the first 6 weeks, it was not the most comfortable, and maybe my latch wasn't perfect. I didn't have access to a lactation consultant. I did as much reading as I could, but any new mom will tell you, or any mom will tell you, that when you're a new mom, your brain is going through this changing. It's like a new way of thinking and seeing the world because you have your baby, and that's now the most important thing in your life. So some people call it mummy brain, like, oh, and some people even say, oh, when you get mummy brain, you turn stupid. No, you don't turn stupid. Your focus just zooms in on your baby. So it's hard to even remember what you did 3 days ago or even 2 hours ago because you're just so into this little bundle. So that was a year ago now, and I can't believe I've been a mom for like a year. This is crazy. For me anyways, I'm like, this is wild. So yeah, honestly, it's the most rewarding job I've ever had. It's the hardest job I've ever had. It really has brought out some shadows, if you will, shadows from my past that I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I still do this. Or like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm like this. Get ready. If you're watching this and you're pregnant, write down all of the things that you like to do, because especially like before pregnancy, because afterwards, when you're in postpartum, you're going to forget everything. I honestly like forgot who I was, and I'm really proud to say that I've come back as myself, stronger and better than ever. And I can credit that to motherhood. But what a journey, guys. What a journey. So on that note, thank you so much for watching my birth story. Oh, and the one thing I'll tell you is warning, this part is gross. When the thing that I was going to mention before, I was like, maybe I shouldn't say it. I'll say it if you're still watching. So when I was basically transitioning from like active labor into like the like crowning phase, I I was very confident that I was gonna have my partner give me this like coconut oil um, perineal massage, like, and he had done it while I was still pregnant. But I was like, once I hit that active or that crowning phase, I need you to put the coconut oil on so I don't tear, because this was a very big deal. I was like, I can't tear, I cannot tear, which I did. But anyways, I was like, somebody said like, oh, I can see the head. Maybe it was the midwife, and I was like, partner, I was like, hey, get that coconut oil. He's like, what? I'm like, get that coconut oil and put it on my perineum right now. And he's like, what? I'm like, get the coconut oil. So he's like putting the coconut oil on my perineum. I am already ribbed. There's poop all over the place, and he is just like, like, he still reminds me of this, and I think it's hilarious. He's probably like cringing if he watches this, like, oh my god, I can't believe you told people this. Yes, it's true. One more thing also, when you're in labor, try your best to be gentle to the people that are helping you, because it's so hard. Like, sometimes, like, when I was in labor, I just want to be like, just shut up, like, just shut your mouth. But I recognize that, what, that's not helpful, because they're just trying to help me. So I just need to like take some deep breaths and just chill. One story that I have is that I told my partner when I was in labor, I wanted him to chant the Gayatri mantra, which is like a beautiful mantra. If you look it up, it's nice. And he was chanting it, and I just was like, hey, stop chanting that. It's not helping right now. Just stop. Oh, bless him. So yeah, that's my birth story. Thanks so much for listening. And let me know, guys. Let me know if this helped you or made you laugh or anything. Bye.